One unbeaten falls while others reach milestone victories. We'll catch you up on all the latest right here on the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report, and it starts right now. And welcome to another installment of the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. Mark Coleman here from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network. Very happy you've joined us to hear the latest in Fredericksburg area high school football. I'm very honored to be joined by one of the very best members of the FLS varsity team. He is a sports reporter extraordinaire. His name is synonymous with Fredericksburg area high school sports. Freelance star sports reporter Mr. Taft Coghill Jr. Taft. Enough titles in that introduction for you. How you been, man?
I've been good. How about yourself?
Doing well. Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, but I know that you've been busy. I've seen your name on a lot of bylines, a lot of stories that you've been writing.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's good to be back, though.
Busy. Good. Hey, how are the Cubs doing this year? They're gonna win it all?
Down 2-0 as we speak, so I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we jump into some high school football then? Big matchup of Stafford County 5A powers this past weekend. An undefeated Mountain View team taking on a 5-1 Brooke Point. Taft, I know you were at this game. Brooke Point coming away with a 29-21 victory.
Yes, very impressive performance by Brooke Point, and what some people call the biggest game around the entire state last week, with major 5A North implications in the playoffs.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit during the show prep. You were very impressed with the physicality that Brooke Point demonstrated.
Yes, they were definitely the more physical team in this game. I spoke with Coach Tommy Buzzo after the game, and he said he challenged his team prior to the North Stafford game 2 weeks ago to become more physical. He thought that North Stafford was going to be a more physical team than them, and they overpowered North Stafford. Then they came and followed it up the next week with another overpowering performance against Mountain View.
And two big, not just county, division games, but also in the 5A. So lots of playoff implications, lots of rivalry implications here. So Brooke Point obviously on a big run. Speaking of running, Damone Drew carried the ball 25 times, 242 yards rushing, and 2 scores. Impressed by this running back here. Yeah,
he's definitely, after this game, I could definitely see why the University of Virginia offered him a scholarship. I mean, he showed the speed that everybody knew he had from track, but then he showed some power. I mean, like Coach Sorrentino said after the game, he can take a 6-yard run and turn it into a 60-yard run. So pretty impressive young man.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, Brock Carnes, the Brooke Point quarterback, also very efficient, 14 of 20 passing the ball, 192 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, you said the key word there with Brock Carnes. It's efficient. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He did throw 1 interception in this game, but typically he's not a guy that's going to hurt you, and he can hit you with the big play. They have a couple of weapons with Benyel Hill and also Kareem Burgess, a big play weapon. So a lot of focus on Drew with that team, but don't sleep on the targets for Brock Carnes in that passing game.
So a huge win for Brooke Point. They have navigated nicely through a couple of weeks worth of very rocky waters here and come away unscathed. So kudos to the Blackhawks for that. Mountain View suffers their first loss. A fairly impressive offensive performance, not up to the standards that the Freelance Star wrote about in the Friday feature. We won't talk about that jinx. Jamil Collis and Kofi, 26 carries, 121 yards rushing. He did have a touchdown on the ground. Also 6 catches and 86 yards receiving. Ahmad Tweedy also fairly effective, 16 of 26 throwing the ball, 174 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. Yeah. Were they just not able to get things together? Only 21 points on the board from Mountain View. What do you think offensively? Was it the Brooke Point defense that just stymied them?
Well, Mountain View, like you said, they came into this game averaging about 45 points per game, and the offense had been really explosive. What Brooke Point did, they limited the big plays. They made them work for everything. They really held Ahmad Tweedy in check with the running game, with his running game, and made Jamil Collis and Coffee work for everything that he got, and pretty much a very collective, strong effort defensively by Brooke Point more than any shortcomings by Mountain View.
Well, wonderful performance by Brooke Point. I should point out Justin Rice is not here this week. It may be a little bit suspect. Justin gave me grief about last week, suggesting that Mountain View was the stronger team here. I predicted a Mountain View win. Shows how much I know. That's the way it goes. But and these Blackhawks moved to 6-1 on the season. Mountain View drops to 6-1. But we've got a number of teams. We were talking about this also in terms of voting for the top 5. There are now 6 teams in the area that are 6-1 or better. There's one that's still undefeated. So some impressive play from Fredericksburg area high school team. Yeah,
and it should be mentioned that was Brooke Point's 6th straight win. They opened the season with that 3-point loss to Ford. Right. So they're on quite a roll.
They're on absolutely a roll. Congratulations to Brooke Point. In a matchup of 2 area teams that have fared quite well this season thus far, JM took the little jaunt down Route 3 to face Chancellor. Stepping up in the division, 3A versus 4A, a strong Chancellor team. James Monroe comes away with a little bit of an upset, in my opinion, here. Back and forth game, JM with the 36-31 victory over Chancellor.
Yeah, key word in that one, a little bit, yeah, slight upset there. Not a major one, but a very impressive victory by JM nonetheless.
And an impressive offensive performance. Let's jump right off the bat with A.J. Felton, 20 for 27 throwing the ball, 249 yards, and 3 touchdowns passing. He also carried the ball 9 times for 46 yards. And by way of those stats, A.J. Felton of James Monroe, the Freelance Star Player of the Week. So congratulations to A.J.
Yeah, it looks like A.J. is developing every week, which has to be a pleasing thing for JM coach Rich Survey to see. I mean, you come into this year having to replace a guy like Jay Scroggins, and you think you have a quarterback that's quite adept at running the ball, but questionable with the passing, and seems like he's coming along quite nicely and peaking at the right time.
Yeah, and only a sophomore.
Yes.
So, you know, that's for Yellow Jacket fans, that certainly bodes well.
Yes, indeed.
DJ Welton with 2 touchdowns carrying as well. Chancellor had their fair share of performance. Should mention Mario Wisdom, their powerhouse of a running back there. 29 carries, 170 yards rushing, 1 score. Jason Brown, the very talented quarterback, 2 touchdowns throwing the ball, also had a touchdown rushing. Chancellor, though, how challenging or how difficult do you think it was? So they had to face Cortland on Monday night and then turn around and play JM on Friday night. That's a pretty daunting week for just about any team.
Yeah, very daunting week. You go from that emotional high of thinking you're going to play Cortland on that Friday night, and the game gets rained out. It gets postponed to Monday night. Emotional game against a rival. You lose that game, and you have just a few days to prepare for another very talented team like JM. It can be pretty tough. Not to mention that was the 7th game in a row that they've played that's been a really tough game. They haven't had any cakewalk games throughout the first 7 games.
Schedule may get a little bit easier for them. We'll talk about that in a bit here as well. But JM moves to 6-1 on the season. They open, so they've won 6 in a row now as well. They had a season opening loss at Dinwiddie. Certainly no shame in that loss. They've performed quite well along the way here. So this JM team, they always seem to have a way of sort of sneaking up on you. They're not going to blow you away, at least they haven't in the last several years. But you look around late in the season, and my golly, there they are again.
They're always going to be there because of that coaching staff. I mean, it's one of the best coaching staffs in the state. They find a way to piece it together. No matter what they have, they find a way to put the pieces of the puzzle together and make it work.
Well, they certainly made it work Friday night. JM with the 36-31 victory over Chancellor. Colonial Forge had to take their 5-1 record up the road to visit a very familiar location for head coach Bill Brown, Hilton. It's a matchup of 2 6A South powerhouses in the Conference 4, the lower half of the conference. Colonial Forge, of course, with the lead in the VHSL power rankings. Hilton right up there with them. Forge comes away with a big 24-16 victory. Coach Brown knows a thing or two about winning in that stadium, though, I think.
Yeah, it definitely showed in this one. I mean, for him to go up there, and I think he knocked him off last year as well, and to go up there and do it again, it has to be a pretty big point of pride for him. So.
And this Colonial Forge team really seems to be gelling, I think. They seem to be on a roll. Again, it's similar to JM, I guess, in a way, at least for me. They haven't been dominating too many opponents. They had a couple of victories against lesser competition, but they continue to rack up wins and rack up some statistics as well. Let's go through the Forge offensive performances at least. Ethan Garwood at quarterback, 14 of 26, 162 yards passing and a touchdown. One of those touchdowns went to, actually the touchdown went to Roman Williams. He had 7 catches for 84 yards. Joshua Surratt also had a 74-yard punt return for a touchdown in this game. Defense showed up and was able to corral Hilton, hold them to 16 points. Forge goes to 6-1 on the year, and they keep rolling.
Yeah, they
energize their bunny here.
Yeah, just continue to roll. And Ethan Garwood, that's impressive for him. I know at the beginning of the year he was splitting time with Owen Schneider. He seems to have settled in nicely, running that offense now, and they seem to be putting it together.
Yeah. They appear to have a stranglehold on that #1 seed there in the second half, lower half of the 6A South. So, Colonial Forge, congratulations to them. The Eagles with the 24-16 victory over Hilton. Well, in the 2015 edition of the Battle of the Bell, North Stafford versus Stafford, this game was close at halftime, Taft, 20-13. North Stafford's able to pull away big in the second half and earn the 41-13 victory over Stafford.
Yeah, that's a good win for North Stafford to get back on track. They suffered a loss to Brooke Point at home the week before, and I know they wanted to get the feeling of winning back again before they go on the rest of the Conference 15 schedule.
Yeah, certainly, and they've gotten one of their threats, who's been a little bit quiet the last couple of weeks, back in gear. Nakeem Morton, 9 carries, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns running. And guess what? Nakeem Morton also returned a punt, 86 yards for a touchdown. Is that his 6th? I want to say that might be his 6th kick return for a touchdown this season. Yeah. And he had a couple of weeks there where he didn't do it, so we may have jinxed him just a bit, but congratulations to Nakeem Morton on that. Zevin Holly with a nice performance for Stafford. He's the Stafford running back, 26 carries, 140 yards, and a score. Carrying the ball there. So a valiant performance by the Indians in the first half there. Yeah,
very valiant performance. They were down 20-13 at halftime. They fell behind early, battled back, but eventually North Stafford's speed and athleticism wore them down. But, I mean, it's still a very credible performance for Stafford.
Yeah. Now, regarding North Stafford, we've talked a little bit about the dearth of 6-1 or better teams around the area. North Stafford's sort of lurking around there and almost now, in a way, the forgotten member of that 5A group. And they're 5-2 for crying out loud. You really can't turn your back on that team either. They've got some threats as well.
No, they have a lot of big play threats, and if they tighten down on some of the mistakes that cost them against Colonial, Forge, and Brooke Point, they're definitely going to be a team to look out for. Joe Mangano, he's known to go back to the lab and create different things and different opportunities for his team. So if I'm Brooke Point or Massaponax or any of those teams, that's the last team I would want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, particularly if you're seeing them for the second time that season. We've seen that a couple of times previously. Coach Mangano certainly the master tactician there in that regard. So North Stafford wins the Battle of the Bell over Stafford 41-13. Riverbend had a 6A matchup against Freedom this past week, a likely must-win situation for the Bears, and they come away with a come-from-behind, actually, 31-21 victory over the Freedom Eagles. Taft, Riverbend was trailing 14-0 at the end of the first quarter rather of this game. Came back with 31 unanswered points, held on for the victory.
Wow.
Yeah. Orlando Jones with 25 carries, 99 yards rushing. He scored 2 short touchdowns. C.J. Washington, an interesting situation here where they put him into a modified Wildcat. We were actually calling it a Bear Claw during the game. C.J. Washington surprisingly throws an 80-yard touchdown pass to a streaking Taiwan Garbett. Taiwan had 4 catches for 115 yards and that 1 score. It was from the 20. C.J. hit Taiwan at about the 50-yard line. Had a fairly speedy cornerback that was chasing him and was stride for stride for the first 10 yards or so. Garbett leaves him in the dust. He's got maybe a 6th or a 7th gear that he dropped it into. Pretty impressive for a big man. I think we were saying it's probably indicative of why he's got the number of Division I offers that he does.
Yes, sir.
The Bears come away with a 31-21 victory. I don't think the Power Poll rankings have come out just yet. We suspect that they're going to leapfrog Freedom along the way. 3-5, but this is an impressive team in some regards. They've lost some very close games, probably better than their record indicates.
Yeah, a lot better than their record indicates. I believe 4 of their losses were by like a combined 8 points or something like that. In my opinion, Riverbend is a 7-3 type of football team. They should not be in this situation, but they are, and they're responding. Like you said, they were down 14-0 in this game, and that's kind of indicative of their season, you know, having to come from behind. And
right.
I think you're going to see a strong finish by Riverbend here to the season.
I suspect you're probably right as well. Interesting to be able to see some of these schools that don't come down south, as it were, come to our local area. So first time that I had seen Freedom, a young team, school has only been around for 10 years or so. So a couple of schools that are still, well, let's be honest, they're still sort of trying to learn how to win. Speaking of winning, we did have a milestone victory for Riverbend in this game. Head coach Tony DeMarco gets his 19th victory as a head coach of Riverbend, and that puts him #1 on the all-time winningest head coach list for the Bears. So congratulations to Coach DeMarco, and congratulations to Riverbend on the 31-21 victory over Freedom. Massaponax and Potomac tangled this past Friday in a game that the Panthers were guaranteed to win because both teams are nicknamed the Panthers. This time it was the Massaponax Panthers who get a milestone victory, 49-7 win over Potomac. The storyline here, though, Taft, okay, yeah, Massaponax with all the touchdowns and the rushing, and that's become almost passé at this point when you talk about Ponax. This was the 30th consecutive regular season victory for this team. That is quite an impressive performance.
Yes, that's very impressive. I mean, you think back a few years ago, they were coming off a 7-4 season, and ever since that 2012 season, I believe it was, they haven't lost a regular season game, so very impressive.
Yeah, I considered going back and you know, saying this is what was going on in the world the last time that Ponax lost a regular season football game. I saved you by not doing that, but it is kind of an interesting little exercise. Should mention, I guess, Joey Bendon, the do-everything quarterback for Ponax, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Tristan Medina with a nice game as well, carried the ball, 2 touchdowns carrying it. 11 different ball carriers for Ponax, 350 yards, team rushing. It's just another day at the office for Coach Ludden and his crew. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much it. But one interesting thing about Joey Bendon, I don't believe he's lost a game in as a starter in his career, because they were 13-0 last year before they played Tuscarora, and he didn't start that game, and that was the game that they lost to knock him out. They won 7 straight to open this season. You know, so that's true.
Joey Bendon, 20-0 as a starter.
20-0 as a starter. That is also a very impressive, impressive little milestone there. Not a little milestone. That's a big milestone. So Massaponax goes to 7-0. That's certainly familiar territory to them. The schedule gets a little more challenging for them, potentially at least going forward. Though we'll talk about this in a bit. But they still have Mountain View, North Stafford, and Brooke Point.
Yeah, they opened their Conference 15 season with Stafford and Potomac, so they opened kind of on the lighter end of that heavy duty conference there. And these last 3 games, they haven't been involved in a serious, really competitive game probably since the opener against Cortland, maybe you could say the Chancellor game, but they haven't been involved in too many true battles. So these next 3 weeks are going to tell a lot more about Massaponax.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've been impressed thus far, as have I, with the level of physical play, how strong this team is.
Yes, sir.
They certainly have been able to dominate some other opponents, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare for the next 3 weeks. But for the time being, Massaponax, the Panthers, with their 30th consecutive regular season victory, a 49-7 win over Potomac. King George and Caroline tangled this past Friday night. King George getting the upper hand in this one, coming away with a 44-7 victory. Picari Brown leading the way on the ground for the Foxes, 10 carries for 111 yards. He had 1 score, but King George had a couple of kids with multi-score games there, Taft.
Yeah, Jordan Alley, an impressive, very fast young man with 7 carries, 86 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Luke Barnum, 4 carries, 59 yards, a couple of rushing TDs as well.
Now, Caroline did get a nice performance from Antonio Robinson, 18 carries and 86 yards rushing the ball. Caroline's really struggled this year. It's not been a season to remember for them. Meanwhile, King George continues. They probably are going to be a playoff team. Justin declared them a playoff team last year. 4-3 on the season now. They've sort of had an up and down season and not been able to string some wins together, but they certainly are a dangerous team when they get that wing T offense running.
Yeah, they've been able to kind of keep their season just a little bit above water here, and getting another win here puts them above 500.
Yep.
They had a couple of decent wins earlier in the year. No real standout victories, but they're hanging in there against some of the better teams, and they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat.
Yeah. That's one of the methods for making the postseason. So congratulations to King George, 44-7 victors over Caroline. Taking a look now at some other games from around the area for Week 8, and we will start with one of actually the oldest rivalry in Spotsylvania County. Cortland taking on Spotsy. 35-0 victory for Cortland. Jabari Allen and crew not really treating the Knights all that well. 2 touchdowns receiving for Allen. Also had an interception return for a touchdown along the way. Cortland runs to and rolls, honestly, to the easy 35-0 victory there. Eastern View gets back on the winning track, a 37-8 victory over Brentsville. Justin Pollard doing the damage, 18 carries, 165 yards and a score. 2 touchdowns rushing for Josh Stallings, and Diego Hunter with a touchdown rushing and also returned an interception for a score. Western Albemarle with a 41-19 victory over Louisa. Monticello with the 26-14 win over Orange. Essex with a big 41-0 victory over Colonial Beach. And finally Liberty winning 53-21 over Culpeper. How about we take a look at the Week 9 games in Fredericksburg area high school football. Taft, I don't believe that there are any games that have more implications or more intrigue to me, storyline certainly, than a 7-0 Massaponax squad visiting a 6-1 Mountain View team. Mountain View coming off that loss just this past week to Brooke Point. Tell me I'm wrong.
I wish I could, but I can't tell you you're wrong. I mean, this schedule is not the most appetizing schedule you're going to see, and this game clearly stands out from the rest of them. If you look at the full slate, it's, no doubt this is the marquee game of the week.
Yeah, it's almost as though all of the other games have sort of stepped back to let this one take center stage. A matchup of 2 area 5A teams. They are at the top of the 5A North conference standings for playoffs. Lots and lots of storylines going on here. Ponax with 30 consecutive regular season victories. Mountain View had been 6-0. Their first loss was just this past Friday against Brooke Point. How do you see this one playing out?
It's going to be a very, very interesting game. Traditionally, since Lou Sorrentino's been at Mountain View, he's had some success, or more success than other coaches, in figuring out a way to help defend that triple option offensive attack. So between him and his defensive staff, it seems like that's an offense that he's seen before, and he's able to come up with something to kind of keep it under control. So we'll see if that holds true this week.
We have seen now that Massaponax certainly has threats and weapons on the offensive side. That was maybe a question mark coming in. Actually, honestly, it was more on the offensive line, but they have certainly been able to dominate. Offensively, they have looked quite good. So the Ponax offense versus the Mountain View defense should be interesting. You mentioned that Sorrentino has a little more success against that triple option than some other teams. How about on the other side of the ball, though, the Mountain View offense against the Massaponax defense?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting as well. Mountain View has a very diverse offense. They're able to stretch the field vertically, and if you look at some of this times Massaponax has struggled defensively, has been against the pass. So if they're able to get Taft Coghill and Brandon White, some of those guys to stretch them vertically, there could be some big plays to be had there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I don't know that any of us really have the answer, the blueprint, as it were, for beating this Massaponax squad, but it does seem as though maybe some quick strikes, some long strikes, which more than not, Massaponax has been vulnerable to those sorts of things, not on the ground but through the air. It's not a ball control, try to win it. It's trying to get into a track meet here almost. And Mountain View has, outside of last week, been able to put up some big numbers offensively. Yeah,
the question for Mountain View is, I mean, before last week they hadn't played very many physical teams. They played one last week and they kind of took a step back a little bit. Now they're playing another physical team, maybe a more physical team than Brooke Point. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to meet that physical challenge and able to also get their playmakers involved.
So, do you want to call the game? I won't put you on the spot if you don't want to, but feel free if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I have no problem saying I believe that Massaponax will be a little bit too physical for Mountain View in this game, and I think Massaponax will come away with the victory.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree. I think probably Ponax is going to be my favorite to win this game as well. What does this mean, though? What does a win? What do you think a win means for either of these teams? What do you think a loss means for either of these teams?
I don't think it means the end of the world for either of these teams, and I don't think it's going to make either of these teams' season to win the game, because you still have Brooke Point out there, you still have North Stafford out there at 5A North, you still have Tuscarora, you still have a bunch of other good teams out there. I mean, either of these teams could win or lose this game and bounce back just fine.
Outstanding point. I agree perfectly. We didn't plan that, by the way, but that was what I was hoping that you were going to say. So these are two teams that clearly have they've secured playoff spots. There's no doubt about that. Where they will be in the playoffs, positioning is still left to be determined. But these are teams that certainly have the ability and I think the aspiration of going deeper into the playoffs. Making the playoffs isn't going to satisfy at least their primary goal. It might be an initial goal, but it's not the primary goal. So while this is a big game, it's not the biggest game that these teams are going to be playing this season.
Because if you put too much into this game and then you come back like a Massaponax will with a North Stafford the following week and a Brooke Point to end the season, if you put too much into one game, it can hurt you. Kind of similar to what we saw with Chancellor and putting so much into that Cortland game, and then they had to play JM at the end of the week. It can hurt you. So.
Both very well-coached teams, Sorrentino, Ludden. Well, this is just, I'm really excited to see how this one plays out. It should be a very exciting game. I certainly hope it will be. We've got some other great games that are on the docket here as well. We certainly know that there are a lot of fans for these schools. Certainly hope that you're able to get out this Friday. Hope the weather's good for you and you're able to catch a great Fredericksburg area high school football game. Well, that is going to do it for another outstanding installment of the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. Certainly hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I owe all of it to my good buddy here sitting next to me, Mr. Taft Coghill, a busy guy, Mr. Fredericksburg area high school sports. You do more than just high school sports, but I tell you, everywhere I go, people know the Freelance Star, and they know Taft Coghill when it comes to high school sports. So
yeah, I might do a little bit more, but high school sports I would say that's my passion. I enjoy that more than anything else. So. Well,
it certainly shows. I always appreciate the opportunity to chat high school football with you, high school sports in general. Busy time, playoffs in the other sports, so it's a busy time. But when is it never busy? Right?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Appreciate Mr. Coghill. Always appreciate the folks from the Freelance Star and the FLS Varsity team. And appreciate you watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. For the good folks from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching.